Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are, anywhere in the world. We're very excited to chat with you all today. My name is Lindsay. I'm from CIQ, and we are looking to solve for secure and performant infrastructure for AI and modern workloads. Today, we have a really interesting topic between myself, Brian, and Jimmy, and we're very excited to share with you. But before we get into it, I wanted to ask you, if you had a theme song to identify what your life is like, what would be your life soundtrack? Brian, what would be yours?
Oh, I thought this was for the audience. I didn't know I had to come up with one. The
Definitely.
audience can't answer, right? Okay. I'm gonna go with Dreams, Fleetwood Mac. Yes, Dreams, Fleetwood Mac. Since I've been young, I've been a dreamer. I think what we're trying to do here at CIQ is support people's dreams with stable modern infrastructure. So, Fleetwood Mac Dreams. I want to know what Jimmy's is. I believe we've lost Lindsay for a sec.
Okay, so mine, isn't too difficult. I do a lot of programming. So on the back end, I play music while I'm actually programming. I just play it really soft. So there's a lot of different soft songs that I listen to just for kind of background noise. But different songs like Goo Goo Dolls' Name, has a very steady beat, very soft, very gentle. It just helps me relax while I'm programming. It helps me think about what I'm doing.
Wait, what was that again? Sorry. What? Not the whole thing. What was the song again?
Goo Goo Dolls' Name.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Very soft song, very quiet, relaxing.
That's awesome. And mine is actually doing it. It's actually Right Now by Van Halen, because we are doing this live right now. And fun fact, I actually skated to that song back in the day. Anyway, let's get into it. So again, welcome.
Well, I'm sorry to break your bite. We have to call out that the audience said Wu-Tang Clan 36 Chambers. Wu is for the children. So I had to call that. But
that's a great one. That's a really good one. I definitely respect that person for bringing that up. That's a solid one. So we're going to have to meet after this. All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to discuss some of the challenges that enterprise infrastructure teams face with the difficult choice between deploying measures that slow operations or maintaining operational agility at the expense of security, perhaps. During today's session, we'll discuss how to eliminate this false choice with an integrated approach that addresses both the foundation layer, which is your operating system or your kernel, and the operations layer, which is deployment and maintenance simultaneously. So let me ask you something. How many of you have been caught in the middle of this fight? DevOps is pushing for faster deployments, and security is demanding that nothing moves until it's fully hardened. So that's the impossible choice: deploy fast or deploy secure. Pick one. The bottom line is your business needs both. The good news is you're here because there's a better way that Brian and Jimmy are going to describe. So let's get into it. Mr. Brian Dawson, thank you so much for being here and for your very wonderful song that defines a lot about your personality, which I tend to love. You're one of my favorites. You're our RLC-H product manager with decades of DevOps experience. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Cool. I'll start with my background, then I'll talk a bit about the role. So Brian Dawson started my career actually, interestingly enough, building developer tools and supporting developers on the PlayStation. That was where I got my introduction to Linux. If people aren't aware, at a later stage of the PlayStation, we delivered PS4 Linux. It was always built on GCC tools for open source. That led to a career in open source, which included a number of years in the CI/CD, DevOps, and infrastructure as code space as that was emerging. I luckily have now landed here at CIQ on the Linux product team, where we are working to deliver workload optimized versions of enterprise Linux. So enterprise Linux with specialization to support your unique workloads.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Jimmy, I've learned so much from you listening to the way you describe Ascender Pro for some of our customers. It's incredible how much knowledge that you have inside this space, and you're definitely our lead developer and Ansible expert. It's quite clear you demonstrate that in almost every conversation I have with you. thank you so much for being here. Can you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jimmy Connor. I started off in IT over 25 years ago as a Windows and Linux system admin, down in the trenches doing the dirty work. Worked my way up eventually to working as a contractor, hardening government systems, doing security hardening on them, moving over to the consultant side, and then jumped over into Ansible. I've been doing Ansible itself for over 9 years now, but I've been doing automation all the way back from the beginning. Because again, when you're doing system admin work, you don't want to do the same things over and over. You don't want to do all the little, tedious things. You automate that. And so I've learned automation all the way back from Puppet to Chef, all the way up to Ansible at this point. And I came over here to CIQ to help lead actually building the Ascender product, getting it up and running to basically share that with the world.
That's so great. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you share with this audience with regards to Ascender Pro. It's really incredible stuff that you've done with your team. So let's go ahead and get into the challenge. What are some of the teams stuck in? So starting with you, Brian, considering your DevOps and Linux background, which is extensive, what's the fundamental problem that you've seen?
Well, yeah, how much time do I have? Well, now I'll boil it down to the fundamental problem. As I said, I've started in the early days of CIC DevOps after, years of actually really at a time when even centralized and shared repos were a reasonably new concept. And the goal at that time was to make software development less error prone, less manual, repeatable, and then ultimately faster. Right. So this idea with continuous integration, continuous delivery, kind of a predecessor or component of DevOps, is that we need to be able to deliver at speed. The faster we could build, deploy, and get software and infrastructure out to customers, the faster we, can deliver value, but we can also learn where we may have issues and iterate again. Right. So now as I come and I look at actually delivering a Linux distro, I go, well, okay, when we apply DevOps to kind of your core and foundational infrastructure, the fundamental problems are the same. How do we deliver repeatably, reliably, fast, right? But then how do we do that in the face of diversity of our customers' needs or our infrastructure's needs? And what I will say is, so that problem is the same, but in a sense, I think when we talk about OS and infrastructure deployment, especially with hardened Linux, the problem's a little bit more challenging. And, that's why I'm excited to have met Jimmy and kind of work on solving this together.
Yeah, and you guys have shown that you work incredibly well together. I've seen some of the dialogues that you have, just trying to really get into the meat of how do we solve this problem on both sides of the table. It's been incredible to watch. You make my job very easy, actually. And so to you, Jimmy, what are you hearing from the teams struggling with this from your side? And you have so much automation experience. What have you seen long-term and what's kind of come up new as well?
So in regards to the operations side, the main thing I hear from teams, I talk to them every week, is that everything's moving so fast now that so much is being thrown at them that they don't really have time to actually do all the work that they're, told to do. We live in this wondrous world of AI where everything is auto-magically trademarked, done for you. But in reality, all these teams are just pushed to do more work faster with less resources.
Yes.
Everything's moving so fast they can barely keep up. And then on top of that, we have now new security requirements coming down, being thrown at them. You have, we have to make sure everything's secure. We have to patch faster, because the cost of actually being hacked and having all your data leaked or having, exploits, it's expensive.
Yes.
So I read an interesting stat the other day, if I can remember it. It was on average over 100 new CVs are published every single day. So when you start thinking about it, and then on some single days, it's over 1,000. So I started thinking about my past. Back in the day, we only patch every quarter. A quarter, basically 90 days, we would go without patching. And you start thinking about it, 90, 100 average CVs. If we were doing that now, 100 CVs a day, that's over 9,000 CVs every quarter. So, how many of those affect my servers? And even scarier, since, Halloween's coming up, so close, how many of those affect my internet-facing services? So we have to move so much faster now to ensure security, ensure everything's up to date, everything's patched. And this is the new world we live in. You have to patch your servers, but the problem is you go out there, you patch your servers on Sunday, Security sends you a scan that says everything's A-OK on Monday. Come Tuesday, new 0 day. You got to start over. But surprisingly, there's not a lot of people out there, or at least some people that still aren't automating this. They're manually logging into boxes. I talked to a customer the other day. They have one guy that's all he does all day. He just logs in and runs DNF update all day long.
Yeah, Jimmy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you ask them, why aren't you automating this? It all comes back to, I just don't have enough time. If I stop to write all the automation to do all this, then I'm just that much far behind over here. So chicken or egg.
Well said. And I like to say it's the classic. If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter, right? Yeah. If I had time to automate, I would have automated. But look, I was just having a conversation with an RLC-H customer the other day, and it's what I constantly hear reiterated. We just don't have enough time to do what we need to do, and the time required for us to ensure we're secure and stay up to date is getting more shorter and more demanding. Now, even moreover, they were saying as soon as we deploy our OS, the app team has already configuration drift instantly starts. The app team has already started turning services back on and kind of undoing the hardening we've done. And that turns into an extra sort of constant challenge. I will add that in this situation, we've talked about DevOps, which is this DevOps, but downstream in a sense. What I'm seeing is the problem of ops to dev, right? How does ops build out the infrastructure to support dev at the pace they need it supported while ensuring that it's meeting the security requirements of the business?
Isn't it so funny that the common theme here is always, if I had more time? And with the onset of AI, I mean, AI is here. This is no longer the age. It's already here. It's landed. We have to live with it. And for my role, it helps me go faster, but nobody's thinking about the infrastructure layer. Now, your CVE remediation the velocity is just going crazy. Like it's just increasing tenfold, nanofold. It's going nuts.
And you got to remember, the other side of the aisle is actually using it too. They're using AI to actually create exploits faster.
Correct. Right. So you guys both went off script. I'm going to pull you back on. So let's get into it. Let's get into kind of like the meat and potatoes. At the foundation layer, which is the operating system foundation, the kernel. Brian, what is RLC-H? What makes it different from your standard enterprise Linux?
I'm going to start with the second piece first. Key thing is it is intentionally not very different from your standard enterprise Linux, right? People trust enterprise Linux. They build their businesses on top of it. One, because it's an open source foundation that the community contributes to. There's transparency. But then two, because it prioritizes stability and security. Right now, where does it differ is a general purpose sort of out of the box enterprise Linux distro does not come out of the box compliant. It does not come out of the box tuned for your security needs. So then therefore you have to put in manual effort to configure that for the specific needs of your secure workloads. So now we get into what is RLC-H. RLC-H is what we call a workload optimized variant of upstream of Rocky Linux, which is a trusted enterprise Linux distribution built such that it is pre-hardened and pre-remediated for compliance across an increasing set of standards. Let's go backwards and start with the pre-remediated. When you get Rocky Linux from CIQ Hardened, or what we call RLC-H, you can get an image that comes out of the box 95+% pre-remediated for DISA STIG. With a few things that you got to switch on your side, you hit 100%. You get 99+% compliance or pre-remediated for CIS, and you get 99% pre-remediated for NIST 800-171. But moreover, what you also get is hardened modules that provide what we call proactive security. So now you're not just checking compliance boxes that used to take you, 5 hours per server or more, but you're also getting proactive hardening modules that don't exist in any other enterprise Linux distribution today.
Yeah, and talk about saving time. You just authored that byline on the difference between manual hardening and pre-hardening. And I think it really showed how having to do that manually could potentially slow teams down even more. And if you have this pre-hardened solution, it allows you to ensure that things are locked down so you can really focus on some of the other strategic operations that the team really needs to tackle. So I love that. And thank you so much for contributing that. If you haven't seen it, it's on the CIQ.com website from a couple of days ago. Jimmy, on the operations layer, so even with this hardened operating system, you need to manage it. Is that where Ascender Pro comes in, and how do they work kind of hand in hand together?
Yeah. So basically, when you have a hardened image, it's great. But with all security, you're going to find that you're going to have exceptions. Not every application is going to work 95% with a 95% step compliance server. But with RLC-H, it's great because you're kind of flipping how everything works, and you're reducing the amount of automation you actually need to run on the servers to deploy them. This allows you, of course, to deploy faster. So typically, when you're thinking about hardening servers, even with automation, that can take 20 to 30 minutes. It's a lot of time, especially when you're doing that across thousands of servers. So the traditional way of hardening is you basically start with an image here, and then you start stacking and running tasks against it, running 300 different tasks to get it up to this level to be compliant. But when you start thinking about RLC-H, it kind of flips that script. You're starting at the top, and then all you're really managing with your automation now is backing it off the exceptions that you need to get the application working. So you're basically now changing from automating and handling all the hardening to just automate the exception way faster. And then, of course, with Ascender Pro, you're also still going to do all your normal configuration management. You're going to do your application deployment, whatnot. But in the end, hardening itself is not a one-time thing. You're going to have to constantly recheck to ensure your security policies are in place, that someone hasn't logged in and made a change. And because of all this, you're going to need an automation product to basically ensure you stay compliant.
Mm-hmm. And you've been on so many customer calls. I mean, they really look to you as an expert of Ascender Pro. I love that because we got the guy, we got you. What are some of the examples that you might have seen, some of the challenges that Ascender Pro really solves for based on some of those conversations?
So we started Ascender Pro from the upstream AWX, but we wanted to go our own direction with it because we wanted to focus on stability and security.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to stay stable because, again, this software runs your company. You can't have things like RBAC permissions breaking when you go from one version to another. It's just, it's bad. It needs to be stable because people are depending on this, but it also needs to be secure. Again, it runs your company. It touches every aspect of your infrastructure. So security on top of that is paramount. So, as far as what it does for you, again, we talked about all the configuration management, everything else. It's making your life easier by doing all the day-to-day tasks that, you don't have typical time to do and do your normal job.
Right. Yeah, so it's on both levels. This is really freeing up a ton of time for the teams. And in an era where we just have none of it across all three of us, I mean, that's the goal. I need a solution for myself as well.
And I'd like to call out, though, Jimmy, I think maybe in your modesty, you are selling Ascender Pro a little short in terms of, right, it is much more than standard automation, right? Like, we can achieve a lot of this with, again, Agilent's Ansible, right? But we are going above and beyond that with Ascender.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff we're doing with Ascender that goes above and beyond that. Basically, automation itself, it fixes a lot of issues. But again, we're taking it further and making it easy for you to access all the information behind the scenes that the automation collects. So you're able to then have all this wealth of information because you get a lot of data from your automation. But normally you don't have access to actually see that data, search that data, run queries on the data, build reports off of that. And a lot of the stuff we built behind the scenes with this allows you to do that. Easy things like going in and, a simple example, if I have I'm swapping from one DNS server to another DNS server. DNS servers are in the facts. I can run a simple report, pulls up all DNS servers that are using the old one. I know which servers now I need to swap over. The simple things like that make it easy with all the stuff we're doing behind the scenes.
Yeah. So let's go another step further, guys. The integration, and I'm going to echo our cloud team and their favorite line, which is better together. RLC-H and Ascender Pro they definitely fit that. They work hand in hand. Why is the combination of the two more powerful than themselves on their own? Brian, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, again, and we've laid this out. You said it, Lindsay, Jimmy said it, is because it enables us to overcome the tension between speed and security, which in reality is always a tension, right? When we, one, take a pre-vetted, pre-hardened, pre-remediated image, and then we extract that hardening into an Ansible playbook, we now have the ability to automate that hardening at scale while still having the ability to customize it for our particular environments, our particular sites, our particular workloads. But now we're 80% of the way there before we even start to think about how we automate that deployment. So we have to turn some dials to make sure that it addresses, our particular needs. And before I pass to you, Jimmy, I also call out the thing that I get a lot of excitement about from customers is configuration drift, right? So now it is one thing to say, okay, we were able to quickly get this out to a bunch of servers, but now I have no idea what the server state is in terms of configuration. And it's going to vary immediately as soon as that OS hits a box. An app dev team, a business team is going to be tweaking it, undoing some of the security. But then also at any given time, those boxes that are running different loads may be exposed or vulnerable or exposed to different vulnerabilities. So now I have to manage that. Ascender Pro, which Jimmy can explain better than I can, now not only gives us the ability to get it deployed, but to get visibility into what has happened post-deployment to make sure it's secure.
Yeah, so Ascender Pro, again, automation in general, you're going to be running that constantly against your machines. You need to make sure they stay compliant. So again, the Ansible playbooks we talked about earlier, the harden the servers, you can use those same ones to actually recheck compliance over and over and over again. You can even take small little patches. A lot of our customers run these nightly, just rechecking automation, rechecking, ensuring everything's compliant. But, we have other customers, they'll actually pull out some key little actual tasks and say, we need to make sure these are the most important ones. We want to run these ones every 15 minutes against all these servers. Again, very easy to do, very quick to do within there, but you are basically moving at a faster pace to try to keep up with the pace that the world's moving. World's moving faster, you need to make sure you're actually hardened and secure. But what we're doing a lot on the back end now is, again, a lot of the data we're collecting, so like package facts. When you start thinking about package facts, every package that's installed on a system, you're able to now really quickly view across your entire organization, your entire infrastructure. If I need to know what versions of the kernel I have deployed everywhere, I have that information at my fingertips. On top of that, we now take the errata data from rockylinux.org and actually apply that to the packages so we know exactly when packages are vulnerable. So if I actually run package facts on a system, it pulls that down. Say someone logged into that box and installed Telnet on it manually. That's going to get picked up in that package facts. We're actually logging changes to packages too. So if a package is added, we log that. If a package is removed, we log that. When you change from one version to another version of the package, we log that. So for instance, I'm troubleshooting, I have an issue with this server, it just started going berserk. I can see, hey, look, go from this time period to this time period. We show that we upgraded from Nginx 1.21 to 1.24. Very simple. It's there, all the data there for you. However many ways you want to actually look at it is there. If your CISO comes to you tomorrow and says, hey, I just read in this journal about this OpenSSH CVE. We need to get this patched. We have the errata data. You can now look across your entire organization, go in, check on the CVE, say, okay, let me search for this CVE. It now shows every package that is vulnerable to that CVE and then every server that is running that package across your entire organization. Again, it's just taking all the wealth of information and just however you want to look at it. You can build reports for that.
Yeah, so it's deploy fast or deploy secure. Now it's deploy fast and secure. And it was funny, I was actually talking to Greg Kurtzer last night. He thinks it's three things you have to focus on: security, performance, and cost. And we won't get into it here, but we definitely have the cost advantage for these two products together and alone. So we're kind of like checking all the boxes now. Deploy fast, deploy secure at a cost that makes things very efficient for the entire team. So Brian, what about scale? In the Linux community, GUIs can be viewed as costing performance. What do you have to say about that?
Well, so I am going to have to redirect this to Jimmy, but this is actually a good lead in for me. So the reality is, in any enterprise that is, which is, I believe something of 78+% of enterprises run Linux kind of as their core OS or backbone. You are deploying it at scale. So you have, in a small org, fleets of hundreds. In a large org, you have fleets of thousands. Mm-hmm. So now think about thousands of servers, packages randomly getting installed on those. Your all the work that you put into getting this secure baseline image that will pass an audit is now changing thousands of times across an org. So as Jimmy talked about, when your CISO comes ask and says, "Hey, we're up for an audit," imagine how long it takes, right? So, a key thing here, Jimmy, before I hand it to you, is this solution can't just work in a clean room, right? It has to work at scale, and it also has to work in real world performant workloads. So we've designed RLC-H to support both, and the better together story, really based on CIQ principles, is about we can't just be secure, we have to be performant.
Yeah. And again, not only that, you also have to be proactive. Yep. One of the great things about this is now you're seeing in real time as new packages come in and whether they're actually vulnerable to something. So if I go and upgrade a package on a system, as soon as that automation runs, comes over, hits me, and I know immediately that this is actually vulnerable to something. So I can patch it before my CISO comes to me and says, "Hey, we need to fix this." You say, "Already done." But within their scaling, as far as the automation side, again, automation isn't hard to scale. For the most part, it's resources. You throw more resources.
But so I'm curious, Jimmy, and I don't mind if I put on your host hat for a minute, Lindsay, because I had to answer this question for somebody recently, right? If you have a large fleet, you could be looking at 10, 20, 30,000 nodes. Yeah. One of the big value adds Ascender Pro has is it adds a GUI, so you can actually visualize the state of your fleet. Yes. Do we have any issues? How have we considered the necessary scale in an enterprise use case?
Again, we run on Kubernetes, so you're throwing more hardware at it when you want to scale. Because again, you're making connections out. It's agentless, so you're basically making connections to whatever devices you have out there. We've done tests up to 50,000 devices at this point on the back end. Just millions and millions. Even on the logging side of packages, you're talking about. I think we're at the 50 million packages in the database we're running right now, just for the full scale of it. But again, it's Kubernetes. You can scale it very easily. You add more hardware, you add more resources, but it's all based upon the amount of connections you're making out at one time for scaling your automation. But it's something we've actually worked on, something we've actually made sure it works here at CIQ.
Awesome. You guys, you make it sound so simple. I love it. It's such an easy thing to understand because it's such a common pain point that we're really attempting to solve with this better together story. Let's go another layer deeper. You guys have both participated in so many different conversations with our customers and people that we're talking to as potential customers. What are the specific use cases where this really, really shines? And supports the internal teams.
I have
secrets, Brian.
Okay. All right. Well, never mind that. No. I'm proud, and I think we're all proud, and I'm excited to share that. Beyond compliance, we've talked about proactive hardening, and I'm going to take a minute because I didn't get to earlier. Some of the things we do in RLC-H and proactive hardening is we install LKRG, Linux kernel runtime guard, root detection kit. Consider it antivirus for Linux systems. Windows ships with antivirus. Mac OS sort of has built-in antivirus and gatekeeper. Linux doesn't. LKRG presents that. We take common packages such as glibc, OpenSSH, which everybody uses, unless you're in an air-gapped environment, and we slim those down and harden those to reduce the attack surface. And then we do things like we take malloc, the user space memory allocator, which every program uses via glibc. That's where a lot of attacks come. They manipulate memory. It's very easy to leave sensitive data in memory, dirty memory, and we do things to help ensure that that doesn't happen. Or our engineering team, decades of security experience, have built that. So because of that, RLC-H, we always had planned and identified before shipping that it would mitigate entire classes of vulnerability, just because those hard modules would mean that an RLC-H system would not be susceptible to vulnerabilities. Now, recently, I'm not going to remember the CVE name, but we will post it in chat, the actual CVE number. There was a System D core dump vulnerability that came out right about the time that we were getting ready to ship RLC-H. Now, to explain how serious this vulnerability is when exploited, it will dump password hashes for every user on that server, on that system, including the root password. Moreover, because those passwords are not, I'd say, the highest potential strength of hashing, those passwords can then be cracked in about 3 minutes. So there'll be a blog post that is a real-world example, proof of concept of how you can dump all of the passwords and you can crack the root password in a matter of seconds. All right. So what is the real-world example we're proud of? RLC-H is one of the few enterprise Linux distributions that is not affected by that. It shipped out of the box with that vulnerability mitigated, while upstream enterprise Linux 9 distributions still have the vulnerability. So, that is exciting, and it's actually one of a number of vulnerabilities we've identified that just don't affect the system. And over, the evolution of RLC-H, we'll be continuing to expand that list. So, not only, as we've talked about, can you quickly remediate CVEs, not only do we deliver monthly releases and playbooks with those remediated, but there's a number of CVEs that you're not even going to have to worry about because you've deployed RLC-H, and we've proven that.
Yep. Yeah, it's almost zero CVEs, imagine. Stay on that for a second, though. How do you measure LKRG's performance impact?
How do you measure? Well, first I'll answer it a different way. LKRG is a K-mod that installs against the kernel and is basically monitoring the kernel to put it very high level, for suspicious behavior, privilege escalations, etc. So the reality is it's going to have a performance impact, right? Because it's involved in, practically every system call. Mm-hmm. Solar designer and Adam and his co-author Adam, or original creator of LKRG, have been very diligent about ensuring that they're minimizing performance impact. So as we've measured it and third parties have measured it, LKRG will have a roughly 2.5% performance impact. Right now, for certain servers, 2.5% is still a lot. So what the team has done is they've shipped all of these hardening packages such that they're configurable. So you can deploy the same base image, and then you can tune your hardening up and down for it to fit the performance requirements of your workload.
Yeah, just to acknowledge Paul Brunk, who is participating in today's webinar. He says, I use LKRG in prod, and the secure Rocky repo has helped us with CVE mitigation. So well done, Brian, on that one, and definitely Solar. Solar is an insane expert at this, at this material. Every time we put him on a platform and just let him speak to the masses, it's just everybody wants to hear him speak.
I can't think, and I know we're not getting into things, but I have to call out that this is an important thing. I forget a minute is we actually have 2 lead engineers that have decades of experience in the DoD, one in decades of experience in DoD on compliance. And then we have Solar Designer with decades of recognized experience in offensive security. And so what's neat, I realized, is we basically were able to put those two in a room and enable people to have their cake and eat it too, right? Which really nobody else is doing out there. Offensive security knowledge, providing for a defensive security posture, and then all the requirements and benefits that you get from pre-compliance remediation.
Yep.
Exactly. I love my product. Sorry, I could talk about it for a while.
Well, let's give all that energy over to Jimmy now. Jimmy, was there anything else that you wanted to add just in terms of some of the real world, any other real world use case that you've heard? So this as an obvious solution.
One of the clients we helped was basically, again, they're using automation already, so they've already automated some of what they're actually doing, but they were moving towards the whole infrastructure as code for everything, to the point that where, again, it's cliche, but they were treating their servers as cattle, not pet. So if you think about in their dev environment, they have their developers actually working on code. They have their own little branch they're working on. When they push it up to that dev branch then calls a webhook over to a sender, which then rebuilds their entire dev environment every single time. And what it does is it deploys the new servers. So it builds out new servers. It runs all the tests against them, runs all the checks against them, makes sure everything works. And then it connects over to the load balancer and swaps it over, and then waits until everything bleeds off the old dev environment, and then it acts as the old dev environment. And for every push, that's what's happening every single time. And because of RLC-H, they're not having to do that whole hardening anymore. So they're able to deploy these servers. They're using VMware on the back end with some link clones, so it makes it really fast. They're setting up a new dev environment in 2 minutes, flat. It's very, very easy, quick, goes through. But they take that entire process and move it all the way up the stack. So now when those developers actually take that code, move it over into their staging environment, same process kicks off. It actually builds out a new staging environment. Then they test everything there, flops it over, removes the old one. And then when they do prod deployments, they do a push in the middle of the night. It then goes and takes that and builds out a new prod development system and replaces it. So no longer are they actually logging into boxes and doing DNF update on servers, or going in and actually updating code on servers themselves. They rebuild every single time. They update their image, and now the image is deployed across everywhere. They don't have to log in the individual boxes. They update here, deploy there. And then we start thinking about, now they're in the process of, okay, well, when we have actually system downtime, say our production server has an issue, application dies. We no longer have to log into that box and just immediately start troubleshooting. What we do is we tell it to deploy a new prod system, but we tell it to retain the old one. So it goes in, deploys the new prod, swaps it over into the load balancer, points to the new prod. Prod is back up and running. And now our developers can log in over here and figure out what's going on with the prod system and not have to be frantic that, we have to get this back up and running right now. Just deploy new, then figure out what actually happened. So that was one of the great examples we had recently of helping one of our clients.
So are you basically saying that they take action before they go and investigate what happened?
Yes. They actually build out the new servers and get everything back up and running before they then investigate why it broke.
Wow.
Again, assuming it's not like a network issue or something else, and then they have a whole new different procedure. And it's always DNS, Of
course. So Jimmy, what's the migration path from AWX or Ansible automation platform to Ascender?
So to migrate from AWX to Ascender, there are two different paths. Well, the first easy one is if you're already on, say, AWX 24 or below, which I hope you are not, because even the latest AWX version out there has over 100 CVEs against it. So again, but if you're over in that 24 or below, there's a lot of customers out there, even all the way down to 17, which is kind of scary. But you're able to actually port that database directly over to us, and we'll actually migrate it up. So you just basically take it back up there, deploy ours, apply your database over the top, and then the migrations will actually bring it up to our standard and it'll run. All your stuff is in there. If you're past that point, or if you have another system that out there that isn't AWX, you can actually do a migration via the API. So we have playbooks that can actually slurp everything down from your current system, stores it, and actually kind of helps you build the infrastructure as code, and then pushes that over to the Ascender install. Incredible.
Sounds relatively easy. Brian, I have custom compliance needs. How do I address that?
This is the core thing of the Better Together story that, frankly, we learned from deploying RLC-H in the field. And that is, while I'll talk real quick about how we deliver RLC-H, or Rocky Linux from CIQ Hardened. We deliver multiple golden images as ISOs, QClouds, or cloud images across all of the major cloud providers that you can deploy remediated right away, right? But what we've heard is, I have custom compliance needs. How do I address that, right? And that is, kind of leans in the Better Together story. We learned at that point that not only do we need to deliver gold images and deliver the repos of those secure packages, but we need to take kind of our hardening goodness, the scripts our engineers spent weeks on, to get, compliant images and proactive hardened images, and extract those and provide those as variableized playbooks, right? So it then makes it easy for you to go into the declarative language, of Ansible, and update those playbooks to configure things that are specific to your system, or in reality, go through and kind of wholesale change those playbooks as needed to meet your specific compliance needs. Because the reality is, as we used to say in DevOps, all organizations are similar, but no organization is 100% alike. There are always going to be that 20% difference you need to account for.
Yeah, exactly. There's just, 20 or so minutes left. I wanted to take a moment to just remind the audience to send in your questions so that we can ensure that we're answering some of the burning thoughts that you have in your mind. And there's one from Jeff Muncie already. I'm not sure which one this is for, but you guys.
It's probably for me.
Great.
Yeah, that would be, they're building a release in -1. So it depends on what the issue is, because most of the time, again, they're testing prod fully before it actually deploys and swatches to the new prod. So the application itself isn't broken, so they generally don't have to jump back to another release. So they're not really have to do N-1. If they think it may be a problem, they have that ability to go in there and actually tell it, okay, jump back. They may jump back 2 or 3 if they notice a big issue. But within there, it's more that, hey, this thing's actually running. It may feel, one of my log files has grew rapidly and filled up the whole hard drive. It could be as simple as that. So deploy the new one, then figure out, and then go in and fix the code one, and then you deploy that to the other.
And in this case, Jimmy, because I had not heard about this case yet, this is almost like, so you have the application layer and you have the OS layer. This is ensuring you always have a clean environment on standby.
Yes.
So if it's an environment issue, is that, no?
Well, it's not on standby because, again, they can build it out.
Well, right. I guess I don't mean warm failover. I figure that was ambiguous. But really what you're doing is you're refreshing the environment.
Yes.
To get it back to a known state, and then you're diagnosing what it actually happened.
Yeah, and again, it's still using the live database. So it's not, recreating the database from scratch. It's still using the live database for a lot of their applications. So there still can be issues with that. But again, now that's just a normal issue you go in and troubleshoot. Yeah, you're never going to get away from that fully.
Very cool.
Yep. Any other questions from the group here? If not, there's a few other things that we wanted to cover just to ensure we gave you the full picture within this period of time. And if not, I have one here. Jimmy, what other visibility do you get from Ascender Pro into CVEs?
So into so with Errata in general, we talked about it a little bit, but we give the data to you in different ways. So you can first see basically at a host level that, hey, these are all my packages and these are the vulnerabilities they have for individual servers, but also at a overview level for your entire infrastructure, you can see at the Errata level saying, okay, I have this Errata that came down from Rocky Linux. This is all the packages underneath, and then these are all the CVEs. We give you data, all the data as far as what that CVE is, what the issue is, what was fixed, what the new package version is for that. Even links over to workarounds, etc., from upstream that you can run if necessary. But we also give that to you in a couple of different ways. So that was at the Errata view. You then have the overview package view, which I can go down to any package that's vulnerable, say Nginx, click on Nginx, and it shows me every Nginx version across my entire infrastructure that has vulnerabilities against it. Expand that out, shows you the vulnerabilities, but also I can show for each one of those packages every single host in my environment that has that vulnerability. And then jump over to the CVE view that we talked about earlier. That's where I'm presenting it a different way via CVE. So basically, it's a huge list of CVEs. Like one of my test system has 1,700 different CVEs against it because I haven't patched it on purpose just to showcase it. And within there has the CVEs, the CVE names. I can actually go through and search if I'm looking for a specific one, like the OpenSSH one. And then expand that, it shows me all the data about the CVEs. Expand that, it shows me all the data about the packages vulnerable. Expand that, shows me every system running those packages and what version they are. So again, just a wealth of information, and all this data comes from just that simple package facts module importing it to us, and then us handle it in different ways.
Awesome. Brian, back to you, because I asked the migration path from upstream to Ascender Pro.
Right.
What's the migration path from Rocky Linux to RLC-H?
Yeah, and as usual, I'm gonna take the scenic route to the answer. I'm gonna start with saying one of our key principles is that, and I think we take pride in it, and all we deliver is we build our commercial offerings on top of open source. So we don't get our value from locking you in to our distro, right? So RLC-H and a number of the hardened components are actually available upstream, right? But we take those, we package it, we test it, we provide different deployment methods, we add value on top of the bits which are coming from upstream. And so now if we sort of invert that to go, okay, great, well, I'm upstream, I can fall from RLC-H to RLC, but what does that mean if I want to go from RLC to RLC-H? And there's a couple of it. Go ahead.
RLC to RLC-H, right?
No, in this particular case, I'm saying Rocky Linux to RLC-H.
Okay, yeah, keep going.
Okay, because it's a longer answer. Let's call out. Well, Rocky and RLC-H is built to be ABAI or bug compatible with Red Hat Linux, as well as mimicking, though it uses DNF instead of RPM, but mimicking the user experience of Red Hat, so it's easy translation. But this is how do I get from Rocky to RLC-H? Well, what we've done is we've built the hardening such that it is a layer on top of Community Rocky Edition. So effectively, in this context of talking about Ansible, if you buy RLC-H, we will deliver you Ansible playbooks, which will effectively turn your current Rocky deployment into a Rocky Linux from CIQ hardened deployment.
Awesome. We are right on schedule. Look at that. Are there any other questions from the audience? If not, I'll just give it a moment. Cool. Well, I think, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for making the time to just share so much information. If you have questions, if you watch this again, it'll be up on our YouTube. Definitely, you might hear something else that you missed when you watch it the second time around. If a question comes up, email us at info@ciq.com. You can also use that form to schedule an expert demo, which would be customized to your environment, as well as a security assessment. There's tons of resources available on ciq.com. A lot of the thought leadership stuff that Brian and Jimmy have authored either separately or together are available on the blog at ciq.com as well. Please be sure to follow us on LinkedIn so you can catch word of the next webinar. There will be a lot more on this topic because security and performance is definitely a strong focus for CIQ going forward. It resonates with a lot of our customer conversations. So we're going to continue to double down on this topic and look forward to your attendance in the future. Subscribe to our newsletter. You can catch that at the bottom of our website. And thank you very much. I hope you make it a great day. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.